The film 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is being re-released this year for its 50th anniversary, baffled film critics when it first came out but now tops the lists of the most important movies of all time. Credit Dmitry Kessel, The Life Picture Collection, via Getty Images May 10, 2018. In the spring of 1964, the filmmaker Stanley Kubrick was very worried. NASA was about to fly the Mariner 4 space probe past Mars. At the time, he was deep in development of a blockbuster film about the discovery of alien intelligence. Word was that MGM had bet their studio on the film. What if Mariner discovered life on Mars and ate them? Kubrick looked into whether he could buy insurance against that event. He could, but the price was astronomical. Kubrick decided to take his chances. According to a new book about the making of the movie, Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, Arthur C. Clarke, and the Making of a Masterpiece, by Michael Benson. Simon Schuster 2018. That was 54 years ago. We still haven't discovered intelligence or even believable evidence of pond scum anywhere else in the universe, not for lack of effort. A new spacecraft test designed to look for habitable nearby planets just vaulted into space, and an interstellar asteroid recently spotted streaking through the solar system was inspected for radio signals. Another robot is on its way to listen in on the heart of Mars. We still don't know if we are alone. Mr. Kubrick's movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey, finally debuted, late and over budget in April 1968, to baffled film critics and long lines of young people. John Lennon said he went to see it every week. It was the top-grossing movie of the year and is now a perennial on critics' lists of the most important movies of all time, often the first movie scientists mention if you ask them about sci-fi they have enjoyed. In honor of its 50th anniversary, it is being re-released at the Cannes Film Festival on Saturday and then in various cities around the world in a shiny new version overseen by Christopher Nolan, the director of Dunkirk and Inception, among other films. He told the Los Angeles Times the original film had been a touchstone from his childhood. The movie, written by Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke, whose books and stories the movie was based on, and directed by Kubrick, is a multi-sensory ode to cosmic mystery, fate and the future. Long stretches happen with no explication or action except the zero-gravity ballets of spaceships immaculately imagined. Image credit Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Ronald Grant Archive, via Alamide Movie broke with many of the conventions of the time, like mood music to tell you what to feel and think. 2001 left you alone in space with your thoughts. The story begins 4 million years ago in Africa, where a bunch of bedraggled primates are losing the battle of the survival of the fittest until a strange black monolith appears. To the thunder of Also Sprach Zarathustra, one of those ape men is inspired to pick up a bone and use it as a club to kill the animals that have been pushing him around. Suddenly, the ape men are eating meat and chasing their rivals away from the waterhole. In a moment of exultation, the ape throws the bone into the sky where, in what has been called the longest fast-forward in film history, it turns into a spaceship. Around that toss Kubrick pivots his movie and all of human evolution. Another monolith appears on the Moon, and yet another in orbit around Jupiter, where an astronaut named Dave Bowman connects with it after subduing a neurotic computer, the HAL 9000, which has murdered his shipmates. In the finale, Bowman is sent through a stargate on a trip through space and time, death and rebirth, returning as a glowing star child to float like a fetus over the Earth. I first saw 2001 in the spring of 1968 in the same pharmaceutically compromised condition that all my friends did. I didn't need that kind of help, anyway, having grown up reading Clarke's stories, in particular the novel Childhood's End and the short story, The Sentinel. The last time I watched the movie on VHS of all things on my tiny home television, was in 2000, on the eve of its eponymous year. I never realized how much I had missed until I read Mr. Benson's book, a deep, informative and entertaining dive into the making of the movie. One revelation is how haphazardly the movie was made. Never mind the special effects and the model spaceships, Kubrick and Clarke were making up much of the story as they went along. Up until the very end, Mr. Benson tells us, they were struggling with how to portray the alien being responsible for the monoliths, until they realized it couldn't be done. We don't know what is out there. It would be hubris to even try to imagine. The story begins in Africa, 4 million years ago, when a bunch of primates are losing the battle of survival of the fittest until a mysterious monolith appears. Credit Sunset Boulevard, Corbus, via Getty Images. This is not a review of the book. Mr. Benson is a friend of mine, and am unabashedly ignorant of the history of cinema anyway. but it is a review of my own shifting attitudes and encounters with the movie itself over the years. One mark of the movie's status as a masterpiece is that it has something different to say to us every time we encounter it anew. Like the monolith, it appears to give us what we need. 50 years ago it was a harbinger of the future. We were about to win the race with the Russians to the moon. A whole generation was pumped and primed to tune in, turn on, and transcend the whole dreary space-time continuum as we knew it. Thoroughly researched by Kubrick and Clarke, large swaths of the film were like a documentary of the future, the space station, the moon base, the grand stepping outward, just as Clarke and people like Wernher von Braun had prophesied. 2001 comes back at another poignant time in history, especially as it relates to space and the cosmos. Once we got to the moon, the script of future history was abandoned by the Nixon White House. It's now been 46 years since there was anyone on the moon. It's possible to imagine a time in which there will be no humans alive who have been there. But now the traditional sci-fi script has flipped. A generation of swashbuckling billionaires has taken center stage in the space business, as well as a new class of wealthy customers who can afford to indulge their services. Instead of Star Child these days we have the Starman, launched into orbit past Mars in a Tesla convertible by Elon Musk. I once wrote that I no longer expected boot prints on Mars in my lifetime. Now I'm not so sure. It's not crazy to think that private outfits like SpaceX, which seem to be running rings around NASA and Congress, could beat NASA into deeper space. It happily come out of retirement sometime in the 2030s to write the words that humans have landed and walked on Mars. Not that NASA has credible plans or the prospect of enough money to go anywhere exciting anytime soon. Under its new administrator Jim Bridenstine, a former congressman, NASA is taking steps to move forward on a long-range program of exploration and survey of resources that would lead to the establishment of a permanent base there. But Mars is having a moment in the popular imagination, from the Matt Damon film The Martian, which got high marks for scientific realism a couple years ago, to an upcoming television series The First, about settlers on Mars being planned by Beau Willimon, the producer and showrunner of the Netflix series House of Cards. This week space leaders and enthusiasts gathered in Washington, D.C. for the Humans to Mars Summit, sponsored by the aerospace industry. The meeting featured the release of a report outlining how humans could be on Mars as early as 2033, where the script has really flipped is in the future history of evolution. Robots have taken over the sacred task of exploring for us. Increasingly sophisticated and smaller machines have spread out to every world of the solar system, buzzing the rings of Saturn, daring the dark voids beyond Pluto and landing on comets, scanning the heavens for new planets, new places to dream about. There have been enough robots, landers and orbiters violating the skies and surface of Mars to spark legends and myths and paranoia among whatever life forms might be there. The next generation extending our telepresence across the universe will be even smaller and cleverer. Plans are afoot to send fleets of spaceships the size of iPhone chips toward Alpha Centauri, like clouds of butterflies across interstellar space. Even if our bodies don't ever cross the voids between the stars, our DNA surely will, in a microscopic cascade of space invaders that could still colonize the. We all carry HAL in our pockets now, and in a few years it will be in our bloods. The future, to the extent that humans are part of it, is bionic. Computers, to the delight of surveillance states and the despair of civil libertarians, can now recognize faces. For all we know, neural networks like DeepMind can dream.